cortex, our primary motor cortex, frontal lobe. Coming down. These are the corticospinal tracts. They are efferent, E for exercise. Think of it that way, E for exercise muscle. Crosses over. And 20% of them don't cross over, and that innervates the trunk. Your trunk has bilateral innervation. But when we're talking hands and arms and facial muscles, that is the 80% that does, the cranial nerves, I'm sorry, no. But arms, fine finger, those cross over. Motor neurons and muscle control, the clinical picture. So I'm going to talk to you guys now about some and how we define it in the clinic. And then these are the different terms. And then I'll go into how it functions from a symptom point of view. So, for movement, we need to interact with our environment at all times. We get our motor cortex. Our spinal cord has to be working. Cerebellum for fine motor control. Basal ganglia for movement disorders. And our peripheral nerves. All the way down to our neuromuscular junction. All of this has to function appropriately, or we don't interact with our environment correctly, right? Let's talk about different movement terms that you'll see in the clinic and what they mean. First one will be skilled and unskilled. All right. This is something that is going to take a little practice for you guys to come up with an idea of what a skilled and an unskilled activity is. Any activity, the muscles are close to the same strength. So I gave you an example when Daniel threw the paper ball with one good arm, and then he threw it with the arm that he doesn't practice with, right? And that he still had the same strength, basically, the same motion in the joints. But one was a skilled movement, and one was an unskilled movement. Sometimes it's hard to quantify that and qualify it when you're writing goals. But that's exactly what you're trying to do. You're trying to take a movement that is a gross, not gross like gross, but a gross unskilled movement, and you're trying to make it into a skilled movement. And to write goals, a lot of times that is the quality that's difficult for you guys to write it as. It comes with practice, believe me. But, and also, that is a neurological training thing that you're doing. I explained to you, we're not strengthening his muscles. If we had him practice with his other hand, throwing, I'm not really strengthening his muscles to throw. I'm not really changing his range of motion. The practice is actually at a neurological level to improve the timing, the segmental mobility, the fractional movement, and the speed, right? So that's neurological stuff. But you teach it in an orthopedic outpatient clinic, or you teach it at school. So an example would be for you guys to do, that would be is, why don't you guys write with one hand, sign your name, and then sign your name with your opposite hand. That's the unskilled, unless you're ambidextrous. And which thing, it doesn't make a difference. The idea being is you have relatively the same strength for what you need, right? Oh, I'm so happy you are here. So happy.
Still have those construction bugs, I'm sorry.
Yay! Did they get fixed?
Put it on ice cold.
Better catch them.
25.
Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to put this fan on. There we go.
Is there a code you have to punch in?
It has to be.
He won't let me change the temperature, but I can put the fan on, so give it a minute. See if that helps. All right, so when you're looking at how you can write your hand with one side with the other, what?
I can feel it.
You can already feel it?
Oh, yeah.
Notice how the one hand is unskilled. So how do you write a goal for that? How are you going to qualify and quantify it? That's where things get a little tricky, and you have to practice. It can make, some of the things you can think about for skilled is, okay, is it segmental movement, or is it gross movement? So an example would be if I'm trying to have you guys writing and teach you how to write with your other hand, which is a neurological processing we're teaching you. Mind you, the other side you've been doing since you were, 2 to 3 years old, holding it, got the great lateral grasp and everything. So we might look at, for skill, we might look at speed of how you can do it. Okay, that would be one way. We could look at accuracy, how you can do it. Can you write it and keep all those letters on that line without having them float off into the sky? keep them down, the size of them. So there's ways to write goals that are based on skill versus just can they write their name or not write their name. And for fine motor control, that's a big one. That makes it difficult. So, for example, for the throwing of the dominant arm, the speed that he can throw the ball. The distance would be one for a skill. The accuracy of his throw. His speed was poor, his accuracy was poor, and his distance wasn't that great, right? So we could look at those and we can make goals based on that. So when we're talking about skilled and unskilled movement, these are some of the qualifications that you're going to start writing in. So I could say, if Daniel, I was trying to teach him how to throw with the other arm, what I would say is something along this lines. He will be able to have a vertical overhead throw with segmental movement, consistently 10 feet, hitting a 3-foot target. Okay, that is very specific, and we go by distance. We could go with speed, I mean, if I had a little gun and I was shooting to see how fast you could throw it. But that's the idea behind it. So going from skilled to unskilled, and this is where it's the fine-tuning of your goals. You guys are looking at me saying that's going to be really hard to write in the clinic. But once you start reading some of people's others' goals, you'll say, oh, okay, I can use that word. Oh, I can use that word. All right, it'll come to you. Okay, we know that it's an orthopedic problem, but it's actually a neurological problem. What do I want to tell you here? Yeah, we could do the number of times of error per time tested. You guys do that with the 9-hole peg test. You'll do some testing that has skilled versus unskilled movements with the upper extremity. When you start doing testing, there'll be like the 9-peg pole test and all that stuff that you'll learn. I think it's next year. And actually what I've done is I've taken some of my varicose clients, my neurological clients, and I brought them in for the second-year students, and I let them do testing on them. It's in Kim's class. So you guys might have some neurological clients that you can then do some testing on and get an idea of how it feels. All right? So we'll see how that works. All right, so you'll see them in the clinic. As the skill level gets harder, the tone increases, and the segmental mobility goes down. So an example would be, if the skill level gets harder, I am able to I'm someone with a stroke, and if I sit still in the chair and I want to comb my hair, if the brush is the same and I'm sitting on a nice stable surface and there's no activity around me, I might be able to brush my hair nicely. If I'm standing up, now I've got more balance problems, I am going to have a harder time brushing my hair because my tone will start to kick in and I won't be able to brush my hair as well. Okay? Another example is right now I'm teaching somebody who is kind of fun. Actually, my daughter's teaching her. She's spastic. I have my computer does the same thing. She's a spastic quadriplegic, Amy, and she's also got a little bit of Asperger's. So she's a spicy one. Anyway, so she wanted to have some goals, and I said, all right, Amy, we're gonna teach you how to play the piano. I already taught her how to juggle. She's pretty good. But the idea is, if I teach her a piece on the piano, I have to teach her slow. As soon as I increase the speed, the tempo in that piece, she's not going to be able to fractionally move her fingers. She's going to have no ability. We have to be slow for her, because the speed would change how her tone kicks in. Does that make any sense to anybody? It happens to us too. I mean, you might be able to learn a piano piece slow, but as soon as it gets a little bit faster, forget it. You're like, whoa, I can't handle this. Well, the brain happens to that with a neurological patient a lot quicker, and you have tone. You guys probably want to know what type of tone you have. All right, so feed forward versus feedback. And this is pretty simple stuff. Did you ever lift something up that you thought was going to be heavier, and you lift it up, you're like, whoa, you lift it up really light? Okay? The feed forward mechanism wasn't working for you. You thought it was going to be something heavy. You go to lift it up, so your body is already prepared for something heavy. The trunks have already tightened up. You've got the real contraction going on, and then when you lift it up, you're like, this is not anything like I expected. The feed forward is that type of an anticipatory action. And these are all motor stuff I'm talking about. The feedback is, say we're walking along and all of a sudden we realize that it's like black ice. Okay, so the sensory input, we're walking along, we think that the cement is fine, all of a sudden you're like, whoa, and then when do you start walking? You start walking like this, right? Because the sensory input coming up to your brain, you don't want to wipe out and hit your head. Now the feedback mechanism doesn't work well for neurological patients. At all. The information coming up into the brain isn't usually as effective. They can't make those quick changes. So an example would be, we have an acute stroke in the hospital. And you guys have to come up with, in order for them to get discharged, they have to be able to sit upright, they have to be able to transfer, one person transfer with their caregiver, okay? They can do it fine in that setting. The bed is high, it's the same situation over and over again, it's a very structured environment. As soon as they go home, caregiver's like, I can't do anything with this person. Okay, I can't get them up. And you're like, well, they could do it in the hospital, why can't they do it at home? Okay? If the sensory input is different, and they haven't practiced it, the first couple of days they get home, they're horrible. And you gotta warn the patients and the parents and the family about it, that it's gonna be different until they get their feed-forward feedback mechanism together and they understand, you know, it may not be the same spot and you're sitting in a chair. It may not be the same type of a cushion. It may be their bed is lower, their bed is softer, there's no railing. There's things that you need to be able to understand that will change the environment that the neurological patient doesn't carry over as well. Oh, let's see. Like, and I have an example here that the stroke person can't walk outside half as well as they can walk inside. Because the outside environment is got hills and bumps, and especially on unlevel surfaces, is what they call it. You know, if you're walking on the grass, their feedback mechanism is poor. It doesn't process as quickly. They're more likely to fall than if they were walking on a level surface. Does that make sense to you guys? It's kind of a tough one to get. Maybe I'll bring in Amy if we have time at the end of the session, and I'll have her play for you guys. She's pretty good. She's pretty good. I had her juggling scars first because they were nice and slow. Then I tie a knot in it, make it a little bit faster, so they go a little bit faster, and a little bit faster, and she got it going pretty good. She wanted to join the circus. I told her no. Okay, the terms that refer to joints and chains. For example, open chain versus closed chain. We went through this with anatomy, but some people are not in anatomy class, so I need to go through this. Okay, so bear with me if you're in anatomy, you can zone out and then you go for the review. An open chain motion is when the proximal joints are stable and the rest of the links of that chain are allowed to just flop all over the place and move. Usually means you got much more speed and distance and activity.